There is a lot happening across Portland and South Washington in 2026, and some of it's going to matter more than people realize. Some of these projects are already under construction, some are opening this year or already have opened, and some are just now becoming real enough to start affecting how this whole region lives, moves, and grows. So whether you're buying, selling, relocating, or just trying to understand where the Portland Metro is headed, this is worth paying attention to. And if you're thinking about making a move here, I help people just like you relocate all the time, and I would love to help you do the same. So do not hesitate to reach out. Now let's get into it. I'm going to start with one of the biggest developments happening in the Portland side, and that is OHSU. On April 7th, this week of 2026, OHSU's Vista Pavilion opens, and it added 128 new beds, and it's changing how Macram Hill campus operates. This is a 14-story, 530,000 square foot tower, and it's part of one of the biggest healthcare investments Oregon has seen in decades. It's backed by Phil Knight's $2 billion commitment. And why that matters from a real estate standpoint? It's because healthcare growth creates a long-term demand. It attracts doctors, nurses, specialists, researchers, and other high-income professionals who often want to live close to where they work. It also strengthens one of the biggest institutional anchors in the region. That creates ripple effects into neighborhoods like South Waterfront, Multnomah Village, and all the downtown area, and other west side suburbs like Tigard and Beaverton that have easier access to OHSU. Hospitals don't just serve patients, they influence where people live, where employers expand, and where long-term housing demand builds. Now let's go to Portland International Airport. PDX is finally started to feel finished. If you've flown out of PDX in the last few years, you already know it has felt like a construction maze. 2026 is the year that already starts changing. Phase 2 of the PDX next expansion wraps up this year, and the airport starts moving towards full operation with updated terminal. The north and the south ends of the terminal are being finalized, permanent escalators are coming online, new exit lanes are opening, and a lot of those awkward temporary bypass routes start disappearing. The walk to baggage claim should get easier too, and more food and retail vendors are opening throughout the terminal. This matters because airports are economic anchors. When travel feels easier, smoother, and less annoying, that affects relocation, business travel, tourism, and overall perception of the city. And perception matters. A lot of people relocating here notice PDX immediately. So it is not just about convenience, it helps the entire Portland Metro feels more polished and more accessible. Now let's jump to retail. Lloyd Center has been long talked about. The Lloyd Center reset is one of the biggest redevelopment stories in Portland. In 2026, this is the final year before large-scale demolition really begins. And what's planned there is not a remodel, it's a total reset. The plan includes 5,000 housing units, a restored street grid, more than 30 acres of concrete being replaced with streets, parks, and green space, and a completely different vision for how that district works. And then there is a music venue. That venue is backed by AEG and is expected to break ground in 2026 and open in early 2027 with capacity somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 people. Instead of a dead mall that empties out at night, you're looking at a district that could eventually have housing, parks, concerts, restaurants, and real neighborhood energy. This is how districts mature. Now let's cross the river, because one of the biggest long-term stories in Southwest Washington is still the Vancouver Waterfront. And this part matters because a lot of people see what is there right now and assume that basically is it. But it's not. The waterfront is a long-term master plan. The first phases were all about public access to the river, open spaces, restaurants, bars, and mixed-use buildings, but a lot more is still coming. There will be more housing planned, more retail planned, and a lot more public areas still ahead. Taller residential buildings are under construction right now, and one of the biggest future pieces in the Gateway area that will better connect downtown Vancouver to the waterfront. That means more housing and eventually more neighborhood style retail. So if someone visits and says the waterfront feels a little unfinished, they're right. It is unfinished. And that's exactly why it still matters as a long-term opportunity story. Downtown Vancouver is being reshaped too. A lot of people focus on waterfront, but downtown Vancouver itself is changing as well. One of the quieter but more important projects is the Main Street. Main Street is being rebuilt to make it more walkable, safer, and more supportive of local businesses instead of just acting like a traffic corridor for people to rip through. Projects like this matter because when cities invest heavily in a downtown corridor, it usually means better retail, more housing interest, better streetscape, and a lot more demand over time. It may feel annoying while it's under construction, but long term, this is the kind of thing that quietly raises value and the vibe of the area. Now let's talk about where growth is happening most visibly in Southwest Washington, and Ridgefield is one of the clearest examples. Ridgefield has planned for long-run growth in a very intentional way. And if you look at the Pioneer Street corridor, that growth is obvious. Housing, retail, Costco, in and out, all of it tells a very different story than old downtown Ridgefield. This matters because growth does not spread evenly. Buyers often choose the growth lane first and then choose the house. And when that happens, resale homes near those growth lanes start competing not just with other resale homes, but with new construction, builder incentives, and new floor plans. Ridgefield keeps attracting people who want newer homes, more space, and still want I-5 access. The friction point is that sometimes the roads, schools, and services are still catching up to the population growth, but long-term, Ridgefield is very clearly still in expansion mode. Camas is growing too, but very differently from Ridgefield. Camas growth feels more intentional and more constrained, which is part of why it stays so competitive. There are hundreds of new homes being added, from townhouses to detached homes. There is a lot of demand, and the large Rock Creek multifamily project is going up near the Camas-Vancouver border, and there is more housing being added close to downtown Camas. That means more walkability, more restaurants, more energy without completely losing that small town feel Camas has. And that matters because Camas rarely has a flood of inventory. Demand there tends to stay strong, so even moderate growth stands out. On the Oregon side, Reed's Crossing in South Hillsboro is no longer just up and coming conversation. It's maturing. Retail is opening, schools are expanding, the town center is filling in, and it is starting to feel like a fully functioning place instead of a master plan people are still imagining. That matters because communities like this then tend to hold value better when they are intentionally designed and actually function well day to day. And then you've got Kingston Terrace near the King City Tigard Edge, which matters for a different reason: price point. A lot of West Side new construction is pushing into the 700s to 800s range, but Kingston Terrace was positioned more into the 500s and 600s. That makes one of those practical opportunities where buyers can still get newer construction on the west side without immediately blowing past that 600,000 mark, which really matters. Washington Square and Bridgeport are both signaling retail strength. Not all important development stories are housing stories. Some are retail and lifestyle. At Washington Square, the former Sears space is coming down and being replaced with Dick's House of Sport. This is experiential retail concept with things like an outdoor turf field, an in-store climbing wall, and interactive spaces. That signals confidence in Tigard and Beaverton as durable retail and lifestyle corridors. More restaurants are also opening in Bridgeport, and yes, opening one or two restaurants do not really change the picture or transform the market, but these are the kinds of signals that tell you which areas are strengthening versus just hanging on. And now let's talk about infrastructure and the stuff that really actually matters. First, the Interstate Bridge replacement. This is one of the biggest cross-river projects in the region. The plan is to replace the I-5 bridge with 2 modern spans, wider lanes, bike and pedestrian improvements, and better long-term transit connections. Construction is expected to begin around 2026 or 2027, with the new bridge opening in the early 2030s. That matters because better traffic flow and better reliability across the river affect how people evaluate living on either side. Second would be the Abernethy Bridge project on 205. That one is expected to complete its seismic and widening upgrades in late 2026. It may sound boring, but commute reliability matters more than people think. If a corridor becomes safer and more predictable, that changes what buyers are willing to consider. And then in Southwest Washington, there are also quieter projects like the Clark County Fairgrounds conversations, the East Fork Lewis River work, and utility capacity planning. Those do not make flashy headlines, but they still matter, because the areas that can actually support growth through water, sewer, stormwater, flood management, recreation, and infrastructure are the areas that keep absorbing demand better over time. So when you step back and look at it all, the big story is not just Portland is changing or Southwest Washington is growing. It's that the whole region is being reshaped at the same time, just in different ways. Some areas are getting different lifestyle upgrades, some are getting infrastructure upgrades, some are getting more housing, and some are getting more demand pressure. And some are quietly building long-term leverage that a lot of people won't fully notice until prices have already moved. That is why strategy really matters. And if you're buying, selling, upsizing, downsizing, or relocating from out of state, do not guess. Reach out. We can look at your price point, your commute, your lifestyle priorities, and which of these changes actually matter for you versus which ones are just background noise. Because the best move is not just timing the market, it's about getting in front of the momentum.